Okay, so welcome to Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Tracy Stein, and today I am really happy and honored to have a really remarkable woman speaking with me today, Kamali Chandler. She is many things. Among them, she is a mom. She is a New York City real estate maven, and she is a cancer survivor and thriver. And so today we're going to talk about a whole range of topics so that you can feel as inspired as I do by Kamali. So welcome, Kamali. So good to see you.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here. You really are incredibly inspiring, and your authenticity really reaches, I feel like, into the soul of so many people. And I'm so happy that you're willing to take time out and come here today and share a part of your journey.
Well, again, thank you. I mean, listening to you and describe me, um, it is it's humbling because I don't see that. I just see myself as just another person like any other person. So it takes me back a little bit when someone says, "Oh, you're so inspirational." Or, yeah, because I'm just trying to get through the day like everyone else.
Completely, and I totally, I understand what you mean, I think, by saying like, oh, I'm just a person, but your story is so honest, and it is not an easy one, and it takes real courage to share things that you think might help other people. And I wanted to just share briefly for people who may not know either of us well. um, I came across your Instagram because we share family members in common. So we are connected by marriage. Your first cousin is married to my uncle. And so we share cousins in common. When we were younger, there would be these extended family functions and we would see each other. You and your brother were younger, but, I remember seeing your, little adorable faces, when, we talked about how when there's a few years difference in age, it can feel like a lifetime, right? The little kids and the older kids. But we had not really seen each other in a long time because people grow up and they get married and they move away, except for at a few functions. And then through my other cousins' Instagrams, I saw yours. And that's how I actually learned about you're going through this really um, profound journey with your cancer diagnosis and what you describe as life before and after. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that, because it seems like it's really shaped your journey.
I think we all have moments in our lives. For me, they're actual dates imprinted in my mind um, where you know you're at a point or something has happened that's going to take your life in a completely different direction. And for sure, October 17th, 2019, for me is one of those dates, perhaps one of the most important. I don't know. I'm still trying to decide if it's the most important, but it was the day when I had not yet been diagnosed with cancer, but I, unbeknownst to me, was stepping into the world of cancer. And I was just going to have a very routine fibroid embolization just to remove fibroids because they were giving me some problems. And I'd had them for so long. I think we found them in 2011. And so here we are 8 years later. And I'm going for this embolization, and the interventional radiologist at Lenox Hill, he discovered that I had cancer. And there are good doctors, and then there are great doctors, and he is certainly amongst the greats. There were signs, and I missed the signs. Um, it's hard to say if I missed them or not. I didn't push and advocate with my gynecologist as much as I probably should have, because I can remember back to January 2017, exhibiting signs. diagnosis and talking to my gynecologist. And it's like, oh, you're entering your 40s, and this is kind of the time when you start going through perimenopause and all of that. And so I just chalked it up to that. And anyway, October 17, 2019 is definitely the day when I stepped into cancer. It would be another month before I was on an operating table and diagnosed with stage 3C ovarian cancer. And it has been, I guess, 16 or 17 months since that diagnosis. And it has turned my life upside down, inside out. But I've met so many wonderful people, and I've come to know myself in a way I thought I knew myself, and I'm very self-aware. But it has certainly taken me on a journey where I had to go all the way back and figure out, how did I get this cancer? What happened? I've never asked myself, why me? I think that would be a very difficult question to ask myself, because in this journey, I've seen so many young people, children, who are diagnosed with cancer. So for me, having lived such a full life, to say why me, I think would be a little bit unfair that's how I feel, to children and young people who are diagnosed with cancer. I still see myself as young, but I'm certainly not in my 20s. And so I had to go backwards and look at my life. Of course, we found out that I've got a genetic mutation. No one in my family's ever had cancer, so it was a shock to learn that there was this mutation. But within my mutation, it was also learned there was a particular lab that my tumors were sent off to be examined. And they found that within the BRCA, which is the mutation that I have, the BRCA mutation that I have, I was actually less likely to get cancer amongst other BRCA mutation carriers. So the question was, again, how? How did I get it? And September 11th, I was in the dust cloud. So that was a big part of trying to understand why I got this cancer, how I got this cancer. But ultimately, to me, I really started looking at a lot of the life experiences and trauma that I went through in my life, and the chronic inflammation that I've lived with for so long, and how the body at some point just gives in to the stress, the inflammation, the high cortisol levels, and hormone imbalances that stress creates and trauma creates.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been interested in, even before people really talking about it, this relationship between, our life experiences and our chronic stress and all the emotions we hold inside, and our immune systems, and how that makes us more vulnerable to disease and illness in general. We're not saying that is the causal thing, but that we are, that we're organisms that are complex, and that many things influence how our bodies can keep us healthy or not.
Absolutely. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So in examining just my life and trying to get some understanding of again, how this came about, it has been a 17-month journey of just examining my life, and most importantly, trying to get to a point where I can find joy in my everyday, not always successfully, trying to keep those cortisol levels, that stress levels, implementing boundaries, setting boundaries, keeping those boundaries, all of those different things. So it has really been an interesting year and a half. for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're saying so many things that are so important. I'm almost struggling to find which one to go to next because, what you're describing is not dissimilar to what other people dealing with cancer or other serious illness have said, and, I spent a lot of my career previously working with people who are dealing with serious medical illness. And there is this common theme of, you know, of people saying I wouldn't choose the cancer or the serious illness because it turns your life upside down. But that it forces them to take a look at things and make changes that are healing in a different way, like reevaluating, like what boundaries are we entitled to set,
Right.
right? What do you want to reclaim as your own? Because, I think, obviously men can be socialized to be pleasers or to be accommodating or not trust our own voices first. But women, I think, are more so. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. And, throughout our lives, it's almost like we have to justify having, boundaries where we can just say no, or I am my own wisest counsel, even if I take into account what other people think or feel, that I get to decide my own worth and I get to decide my own boundaries and even how I allocate my time. And a lot of what you were talking about and what we talked about beforehand made me think of that.
Absolutely. And for me, I was a young mom, um, and I was a wife at 18. And so when you're thrust into that position at such an early age, you know, there's such an important time, college years, those years where we are able to form our own identity, understand what are the things that I like. You're allowed to be selfish, unapologetically selfish in your teens and 20s. I didn't have that opportunity. So my life, I feel, has been about taking care of other people. And even going back, you know, when I think about my early years, and it's important for me to say one thing. I have experienced a lot of trauma in my life, and that is certainly a part of my story. It is not all of my story. So I would really, um, it would make me sad, I think, for someone to hear this and listen to this podcast and come away with a feeling of sadness. For me, I feel like I've had a very good life. I feel, even with childhood sexual molestation as part of my story, I feel like I had a happy childhood. I am very happy as a person. I've experienced so many wonderful things, but there are unhappy, negative things that are weaved into that. But I think everyone's got their story. No one leaves this earth unscathed. Everyone's got a journey, and this one was mine. But when I think back to kind of the early things, the things that happened in my life to start this cycle um, of stress and cortisol and inflammation in my body, you know, my birth was a traumatic birth. I was a breech baby, and there is a lot of research that has been done about the psychological effect of one's birth and how that starts you off. When finally, after a day and a half of labor, they finally decided to perform a C-section on my mother. They actually cut me, so I've got a scar.
Oh my God.
My side, and that was my introduction to the world. Um, my mom loved me, though. Of course, it was a happy. I don't remember those years as bad years, but they were. That was my start. And my father, which I've written about, actually, there's an article somewhere on Girl Boss. I've written about my father and his mental illness. He was severely, schizoaffective, and um, his first kind of breakdown was when I was born, the pressure and the stress of all of that. And so those are some of my early memories, me taking care of my little brother to kind of shield him from that. And I was 3 years old. Um, so I remember all of those things, and certainly triggered things within my body, I'm sure of it. But also having experienced, childhood sexual molestation from about that age to 12, and understanding very early on that the adults in my life, they just were ill-equipped to deal with those truths. But I knew my truth, even at that age, even at 12, I knew my truth. And it gave me a sense of awareness, but it also gave me a sense of you can only count on yourself, which is not great to have that feeling at that age. But it also gave me a sense of confidence and strength to know that I alone, I could do anything. And that is somehow a huge gift to have. And it has carried me even through this cancer journey. It has carried me, knowing who I am and knowing what I need and knowing what I am capable of accomplishing, has helped me as a single mother, helped me as the real estate maven that you.
New York's a tough market. That's not easy.
Goodness. But yeah, it's just that sense of awareness, that sense of strength has really carried me throughout my life.
Yeah, I mean, and you're so incredibly brave and giving to share these details, which are so personal. And, they're not easy. They're not easy to talk about, but they're so important because I think the things we don't talk about as a society are the things that really fester. And I feel like, childhood trauma is one of those things that we really don't, survivors really don't feel that they can talk about. And they do become overly self-reliant. And you're absolutely right that there is that one side of that where it's like, oh, I can do it because I've done it myself. I can rely on me and I know that I'll get myself through this, right? It's that source of strength. But there's also, and again, you're not the first cancer survivor to talk about the hyper responsibility factor, but especially with like female cancers. And it's interesting, the correlation between that having to be hyper responsible to take care of everybody else and holding so much in. And then immune systems just saying, I can't do it anymore. We have to be on the same team and I need you to take care of you first.
Absolutely.
Metaphorically.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a huge component in that because, as you said, or you were saying, there is that strength that I was able to build and that carried me through. But of course, there's that other side of it where I did not learn and have the tools to really put myself first. It's one of the most basic concepts, even when you're flying, and everyone uses that analogy of putting the mask on. Yes. You yourself as a parent before you even take care of your child. And as women, I think we're not taught to put ourselves first. And certainly I am finally learning how to do that because the flip side of the trauma that I experienced early on in my early years, of course, then led me to become involved in relationships that were very toxic, that were definitely they can definitely be classified as domestic violence or intimate partner abuse, because I didn't have the tools to always put myself first. And it was more about, can I change this person? I understand their trauma and I understand why it is that they're doing what it is that they're doing. So let me try to help them because I'm stronger than they are. They might be physically stronger than me and showing me that they're physically stronger, but I know that I'm stronger and I can help them. And ultimately, it was, to my own detriment, because obviously that is adding more scars, more trauma, more inflammation, more stress, until, like you said, my body just said, that's it. I can't do this anymore. Until you start putting yourself first, I can't help you.
And again, I think this is kind of endemic, right? This feeling that, women in general will say something like you said the other day. That didn't surprise me at all. And I think a lot of people would resonate with, and even women who haven't been traumatized. You said, despite how difficult this journey has been and everything I've gone through, I am so glad it's me and not my children. And part of the gift of who you are is that you are so loving and you are so compassionate and you are so thoughtful. And yet it's that challenge, right? To balance. I'm getting teary as I'm
Oh,
talking to you about this, because I'm very moved. But how hard it is to find the balance between saying, I've got to put on my mask first. And in fact, you had an Instagram post that it wasn't even like such a heavy Instagram post, but it was something that I think a lot of people just got right away. Is you had this image of what I imagine was your living room and some candles, what looked like by the fireplace. I probably didn't have my glasses on, so I couldn't see as well, but it's another whole thing. But you said, I'm taking time to spend some time with my favorite person, me. And I just thought, that's absolutely right. And I could picture you with like matcha tea and a good book, turning off the ringer on your phone, just being like, this time is for me. And how those simple things can be so healing in and of themselves.
absolutely. One thing about me, I think that if someone Googles my name, and they'll find me at this event or that event, which I am so grateful to have had those experiences. But one thing that most people don't know about me is that I'm actually an introvert. As a child, I felt most at peace. I was a very quiet child and loved playing with my dolls. And I could play in one corner alone for hours on end. And that was part of, I understood early on that in order to feel in control, because of all these things that were happening to me that I had no control over. I had no control over the use of my own body. It was someone else's, pleasure. Or um, I always had to control my environment, and I don't even to this day like a lot of people in my home. Some of my closest friends have never been to my apartment. I don't feel comfortable going to other people's homes. I need to understand where I am, and I need to be alone with my thoughts to just recalibrate. I call it recalibration, and I'll tell my friends, I'm going off the grid, need to recalibrate. And I'll just kind of disappear for a while. I need that. And I've always known that I need that. It is how I operate. And I and I do it unapologetically. I think people find me sometimes to be a little bit weird. That's who I am. I am kind of a loner in that way. I need time alone, and I like who I am. I like who I am. And so, yes, I am my favorite person.
It's so important. And I think I would just describe you as self-aware. I think part of the maturity of, as we, go through life, and as we have a lot of experiences, that I'm thinking of the word like temper, like, where we're melding down, we're heating up metal to the point where it seems, like, how could this, anybody sustain this? And then it cools into something stronger, and we make ourselves into something that's stronger and just more adaptive. And I think it's really important and adaptive to know who you are and honor that.
It's so beautifully put. So thank you for that. I usually liken myself and these kinds of things to kintsugi, which is a Japanese art form where they'll find some relic, some pottery from, who knows when, and they reassemble it. But instead of trying to make it look perfect, they'll take a gold kind of adhesive or glue infused with gold. And that's how they will reassemble this pottery. And so you see this relic put together, but the gold veins are there where it was broken. And so I always say, I'm stronger in the broken places. I love my scars. I love all of the things that I'm not going to say I'm thankful for those things, but I think a huge part, if we can all get to a point of acceptance. I felt, for instance, when I was diagnosed with this cancer, I'm a realist. I'm a realist. And I understood very well that at stage 3C, the 5-year survival rate is 39%. That means I may not make it to 51. I understood that the recurrence rate is 80 to 90%. As I approach my 1 year of being in remission or NED, no evidence of disease, everyone is celebrating, but I'm also very aware that most recurrences start happening now. At the 18-month mark is usually when the recurrences start to happen. And so everyone is around me is celebrating, and I don't want to take that away from them, but I cannot tell you that I don't think about the fact that if this cancer comes back, and again, the recurrence rates are 80 to 90%, I no longer, it's no longer a curative intent, it's a palliative intent. It's all about trying to keep me alive for as long as possible. And so I go back to the word acceptance. Before I could really fight this cancer and give it my all, I had to reach a level of acceptance of what is. I couldn't be in denial. I've never been that person. I'm a truth seeker, and I've always operated from a place of just being genuine and truthful, and that is my reality. That is my reality. Acceptance of the things that I've been through, acceptance of where I am today, and acceptance of what might be. And in that acceptance, I'm able to find the strength to move forward. And it's hard for me when someone says, well, you're telling me this data, but you've got to stay positive, which I've heard this term thrown around about toxic positivity.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's just like, well, I am positive. I mean, the fact that I'm here with you right now and I put on a little makeup, that is my being positive. Because I do have the choice to just stay in bed and not move and just be the cancer patient, be the childhood sexual abuse victim, domestic, I could be all of those labels. But I've accepted that was my journey, that was my cross to bear. And in that acceptance, I can operate in a healthy way. I'm saying a lot.
No, what you're saying is honestly, really, it's so moving because it is so authentic and so important. And again, like I feel like I'd like there's so many things I wanna, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how I could even do it justice. I want to kind of tie this into what you said on your Instagram, but and what we've talked about is being a cancer thriver, not just a survivor. But also that does not mean that every day is rainbows and flowers, that you can have days when it feels difficult to go on. You can have days where the taste in your mouth or the fatigue become things that a part of you just says, I just can't anymore, or I just don't want to. And still be a person who can go and see the cherry blossoms and find the magic in them, or again, find the meditation in that cup of tea, or the gratitude for something beautiful in your life. And so thriving does not mean that you don't also have thoughts and feelings and fears. that it doesn't mean toxic positivity.
Yeah. It is any kind of chronic illness, whether it be cancer, whether it be fibromyalgia, whether, arthritis, it's just your body just does not operate in the way that you're accustomed to it operating. And anyone who says that they can just come out of this and just go run a marathon, I mean, bless them. And if they could tell me how they're doing it, that would be great. But it is not easy, and it's not even day to day. It's really moment to moment, because I can open my Instagram after you and I finish this and find out that one of my, teal sisters, teal is the color, here you go, is the color of ovarian cancer. I can find out that one of my teal sisters, someone who I've never met in person, passed away. And that reality, first of all, the sadness of the loss of life, but the reality of what that means to me, it can change my day. Or I can wake up and the medicine, for some reason, has built up in my body, the toxicity level has built up in my body that day in a way that I am just leveled and I cannot move. I mean, you just can't. You don't have the strength. You just don't have it in you. And then the next day, I walk 10 miles, literally. I can walk 10 miles.
Wow.
So it's so moment to moment. It's so day to day. And I have learned that it is okay not to be okay. It is okay not to be okay. And in the days that you're not okay, do what you need to do to make yourself happy. I don't know if happy is the word, but just able to deal with it. Call a friend or don't call a friend. Take an Epsom salt bath. Go get a massage. Go for a walk, or just sit in front of your computer or your television, watch Netflix, and order in. And don't be shamed for ordering in. We as cancer survivors and patients get shamed a lot about what we're eating. It's like someone will see you having a Shake Shack burger and they're like, are you supposed to be eating that? And it's like, can you just let me have some joy?
By the way, I'm thinking of a specific person who is also a cancer thriver who has said nearly the exact same thing, like, leave me alone. I'm going to have this martini or whatever it is that, that it's not about now being more anxious about everything you do. That's not helpful.
Right.
And yet, look, I know you make great choices.
Right.
But part of those great choices can be doing things that help you feel normal and feel joy.
Right. Exactly. I think that's important. And again, you said real estate maven, and I just feel so far removed from that, because me, the city girl, the New York City girl, all of a sudden I've just become this nature person. And I'm so happy for that. I've discovered places, little nooks in Central Park that I didn't know existed. And I'm a born and raised New Yorker. And every day, every time I go to Central Park now, it's a new discovery. And it's just such a wonderful thing. And I have these 4 little plants, and I did not like plants, that I wake up to every morning and I talk to them, and they have names.
I love it.
It's just these little things that have, in these last 18 months, have given me such comfort and allowed me to be on this healing journey and get me through those tough days. Art therapy. I can't even draw a stick figure. Just therapy alone, just having a therapist who can recognize when you are spiraling, like I was in January. I really got to a point coming into this year where I almost hoped my cancer would come back, because I just didn't want to continue living like this. And I didn't recognize that I actually had some, these hormonal imbalances, chemical brain imbalances. I had a forced hysterectomy, which threw me into menopause. I had chemotherapy still flowing through my veins. I'm still on what we call PARP inhibitors. all of these things cause chemical imbalances, and all of these things cause depression. Menopause causes depression. And I've got these three forces working in my body, on top of not knowing if this cancer is coming back, on top of, just financial realities. And my therapist recognized it quickly and very quickly put me on a low dosage of an antidepressant, and it worked. Thankfully, thankfully, I feel blessed to have that, because it allowed me to have a little bit more clarity, um, and strength to deal. Yeah, there's no shame in it.
There isn't. And I'm so glad you bring that up because, again, I'm thinking of the well-intentioned but not informed people who will say, you should be happy. You have no evidence of disease. And as if there aren't lingering effects from treatment or illness, or as if you don't have things on your mind and as if your whole world hasn't shifted in some way. And that's really the mildest way I can put it, because of this experience and this journey, and that it is so important to reach out for help. And we're in an era where medication can get a bad rap, and again, I also know that there are many people who are overprescribed and maybe not doing other things that they also need to be doing. But I have absolutely seen where even small doses of antidepressants can be life-saving. It can be a lifeline for somebody. And that doesn't mean you don't also do the other things that you feel are health supportive. And talking to somebody where you can just let it all out and leave it there and know that it's safe.
Yeah, I
So,
think
so important.
taking care is so important. For me, yes, my therapist understood that it would be a low dosage, and she told me very matter of factly, I don't think you need this long term. I think 3 or 4 months just to get you through the winter. And we're just, the oncologists don't prepare you. They're so focused on keeping you alive, and then you finish treatment, chemotherapy treatment or radiation therapy, whatever immunotherapy you're on, and you're finished, and you're healthy, so to speak, and they don't warn you that the psychological fallout after the dust has landed, I guess, and you're just left there in this, like, your life has just been obliterated, and therapy's over, the doctors aren't there as they were for the last 4 or 5 months, and you're just left alone thinking, what do I do now? And the psychological fallout from this diagnosis, I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for it. Um, it's almost, women who just finished giving birth, and you're not told that you might not be this happy mom with this newborn baby. You're just left like, okay, what do I do now? So I think that these things happen in a lot of major life experiences, or events, and there should be a little bit more done, by doctors to at least give us a heads up and make sure that we are at least in contact with people who can help us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you've brought so many really important pearls today. And I could talk to you for hours, and I'm mindful of the time, but you have all of these, it's like these incredible, I get pearls of wisdom is the only thing I can think of, but these things that are so vital for people to know, both people who are going through a journey like this, their own version, and people who love them and want to be supportive and not inadvertently unsupportive or unhelpful.
Right, right.
Any kind of last thoughts on what you would like people to take away?
Acceptance, I think, is a big one. And I think living your own truth. I think as long as you know yourself, and as long as you know yourself, I think it will help so that when you're encountered with different people or different experiences or something that can completely derail you. If you stay true to who you are, I think that helps. And I think the times that I have been derailed were the times when I did not stay true to myself. I know what my value system is. And if someone tries to, peer pressure exists at all ages. And when someone has tried to kind of pull me away from what I know to be true, I think that's when I have I've encountered some difficulties in my life. So just know who you are, and stay true to that person. And that's really all I can say. I'm not sure if I'm saying much with that, but stay true to who you are. And just one quick thing,
Yeah,
I'm
of course.
shocked still. I'm sorry that I'm using the word shocked, but so many people who've gone through this, some of my friends and loved ones who've gone through this ovarian cancer journey with me. And I'm still so surprised that so many of y'all don't know what the symptoms are of ovarian cancer. Please,
Definitely
please
share.
educate yourself on that. There are 5 gynecologic cancers. You're only screened for one of them at your annual GYN checkup, and that's cervical cancer. For those other 4 cancers, you're not screened for them. You're not. There's no screening for them. And so oftentimes, more often than not, when you're finally diagnosed is at an advanced stage where the diagnosis, the prognosis is a lot less um, it's not a great it's not, I'm losing my words, but
Yeah.
for ovarian cancer, which is 90% curable if caught at an early stage, it's shocking that more than half of the women diagnosed are not diagnosed until
Right.
they're advanced in this cancer. And so please just
Symptoms for women to pay attention to.
frequent urination. That was a big one for me. Bleeding when you're not supposed to be, breakthrough bleeding, postcoital bleeding, back pain, fatigue, just waking up and just can't wait till it's bedtime again. Uh, Bloating, I think I may have said that. Nausea, feeling full after eating a very small meal. That is a huge one. And all of those symptoms can just be, just like, oh, it's just you going through menopause, or, you've got IBS. And so many of us are just given, a pack of Tums and chewed away. And again, um, you've got cancer, and I actually had an ultrasound where um, my gynecologist unfortunately misread and
Oh.
didn't see that my right ovary was undetectable in that ultrasound, and that was in June of 2019. And November 2019, I was on an operating table. So
And then that leads me to one more thing that we had talked about previously. And it's that when you are relatively young and beautiful, and I'm not being gratuitous, it's true, or you should know it's true. But when you look like you have the whole world, in the palm of your hand, right? You look like your life from the outside looks like, well, she's a successful professional and she is beautiful and she is, upbeat and appears, healthy and, all this checklist of things where people fill in the narrative with what makes sense to them, right? It's kind of like a big Rorschach where everybody sees this thing before them, this person before them, and just fills in with a narrative that makes sense to them, but based on their assumptions. And we all have them, but how even, medical professionals can miss things. And that I'm hoping that people who listen to this episode will realize that pay attention to your body, pay attention to your own gut feelings, and advocate for yourself. And sometimes that means, unfortunately, going to get another opinion, even if you really like and respect and trust the physician who's doing the first round of exams
absolutely.
on you, and not being shy or feeling like we're taking up too much space. by contradicting somebody we like and respect who's in a position of authority. Like really, what I take from everything you've said today is like to know, honor, and love yourself, right?
Absolutely. Know yourself, and yes, honor yourself. And for those of you listening who maybe have had traumatic experiences, again, that's a little bit
It's
harder
harder.
because we're not taught to advocate for ourselves. We're taught to just be silent and suffer in silence and just be strong. So it's a little bit harder. So you need to know that about yourself, that you really need to maybe try harder to advocate for yourself and be heard and make sure that you are heard. But it also, it's also community. And when someone says or asks, how are you? It's such a, I sometimes wish we could just get rid of that. How are you? Because we all just say fine. Um, ask your friends, ask your loved ones, how are you really? Look at me and tell me, or don't be afraid to say I noticed this, or yeah. And just, we are also a community and we're all interconnected. So if you see someone who maybe sometimes has a harder time advocating for themselves, help them and be their voice sometimes. But ultimately, yes, you have to take responsibility for yourself, because most often than not, people are well intentioned, but they're busy with their own lives. And you've got to honor yourself and take care of yourself. There are people who need you and love you and need for you to stick around for as long as possible. So please. Yes.
Kamali, thank you so much. This has been really so powerful. I'm so grateful, both to get to see you again and to have you share your journey with such incredible authenticity and generosity of spirit. If people want to find you on Instagram, how can they find you?
They could find me at kamali.chandler. That's my Instagram handle. Yeah, that's where I am on Instagram most times. I have a love-hate with social media, but
Totally get it.
I'm usually there. So thank you so much for
Oh,
doing
thank
this and giving us a platform to tell our stories and our truths. And yeah, thank you.
you. Oh, my pleasure. And for those of you listening, you can learn more about Kamali again at her Instagram. And if you like the podcast, please hit like and share and subscribe. And you can listen wherever you get your normal streaming podcast. This will also be on YouTube as well. And so again, Kamali, thank you so much. I'm going to blow you a kiss and give you a big virtual hug.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. And thank you
You
again.
too.
Bye.